This video marks a momentous occasion. Finally, for the first and probably only time in this series, I determine all the background music that goes under my narration. Because in this video, you're not going to hear any music from the films described, not a single pizzicato. In this video, we are going to talk about the power of quiet. One of the most important decisions a composer or music editor can make is understanding when a scene should have no music at all. It's a paradoxical decision for an artistic craftsman, the decision not to craft. It sounds a little like an actor deciding not to act for a particular scene, or a cinematographer deciding not to edit anything. Especially when there's such a drive to show off one's own work, it's a mark of good craftsmanship when the music department abstains, realizing when no music is better than the best music. Let's begin with a pragmatic example. Any scene where the characters are listening intently almost always plays better without music. Thriller and action films often have these situations, like the popular scene in Mission Impossible, where the slightest sound may trigger an alarm. Since the silence itself is playing a key role in the story, the scene is much more effective without underscore. Leaving out music in these scenes allows room for the audience to appreciate details they might otherwise miss, like, say, panning. When both the audience and the characters are focused on listening, it transports the viewer into the shoes of the person on screen.
You move, you die.
A classic example can be found in this famous moment from Jurassic Park, where the distant yet powerful sound grabs the attention of every character present.
Maybe it's the power trying to come back on.
But these moments when characters are listening aren't the only times when underscore is best left out. After all, just keep watching that famous scene from Jurassic Park, and even as the Tyrannosaur attack is in full swing, when none of the characters are quietly listening, there is still no music. This exemplifies a second reason why a film might leave out music, to leave space for sound design. This reveal of the Tyrannosaurus Rex is a triumph of sound design, and it's made all the more potent by the lack of music. We see this same consideration in the chariot race of Ben-Hur. The effect of this is tremendously built up. The film to this point has had an incredibly broad and grand orchestral score, and the chariot race is preceded by a special parade set to a musical march, a scene almost entirely devoted to the music. But once the race begins, what music do we hear? Not a single note. And it's marvelous. Again, an example of leaving space for the sound design. The horses' hooves, the cheers from the crowd, the rattle of chariot wheels, even with the recording technologies of the 1950s, they all combine to create a soundscape that best carries the scene on its own. But staying within this same film, we can see a third reason for leaving out music, to emphasize the seriousness of dialogue. Ben-Hur's conflict is centered on the rivalry between Judah and Masala. Music often plays during those scenes when they're friendly with each other. However, with the exception of their final confrontation, the score is silent whenever they argue.
I tell you, the day Rome falls, there will be a shout of freedom such as the world has never heard before.
This kind of quiet isn't there to showcase sound design. It's not there to mimic a character's intense listening either. It's there to emphasize the drama of the dialogue. Even with the powerful emotions felt by these characters, underscore isn't necessary here because the dialogue itself is strong enough to carry the scene.
Marcella, I beg you. Beg!
Didn't I beg you?
One of my favorite examples of this use of quiet is in Elmer Bernstein's score for To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a graph of every musical cue in To Kill a Mockingbird. Notice the big space partway through the film? It's an award-winning score, and yet there's a half-hour gap during which no music at all plays, and those of you who are familiar with the story might be able to guess what occurs in that gap. This section is the trial, the one section of the story where we remove ourselves from the world of children and enter the world of adults.
I got something to say. And then I ain't gonna say no more.
During the trial itself, there is no music, once again using quiet to emphasize the drama of the dialogue.
In the name of God, do your duty.
Finally, let me suggest a fourth use of quiet in films, to mirror the themes of the story. In these cases, the lack of a score can extend for almost the entire film. Undoubtedly, one of the best examples of a sparse score supporting a film's themes can be seen in the unrelenting Coen brothers film, No Country for Old Men. Why does this film have almost no underscore? The story is about a serial killer hunting down a thief. It's bound to have tense scenes. So shouldn't it be filled with scary tremolo strings or maybe some ominous brass hits? Of course not. The decision to have practically no underscore was just the right approach for this film. Because while No Country for Old Men is scary and thrilling, it's also nihilistic. What makes the Anton Chigurh character so terrifying isn't just that he's a murderer, it's that the deaths he causes are so meaningless and unfeeling. It's a theme that's developed strongly in the script of the film itself. Sometimes it feels like the characters aren't fighting to live, they're fighting for meaning.
You know what date is on this coin?
No?
1958. It's been traveling 22 years to get here. And now it's here. And it's either heads or tails. And you have to cycle it.
And that's why there's no music. A world without music feels like a world without meaning. It feels like the world of Anton Chigurh.
Call it.
The coin don't have no say. It's just you.
I got here the same way the coin did.
The film Castaway is also a great example of the lack of music contributing to a film's themes. Now, this movie does have underscore, but it only plays during Nolan's mundane life. For the entire period when Nolan is on the island, there is no music. By separating the island portion of the story musically, Nolan's island life feels sparse, desperate, and devoid of the comforts that he's accustomed to. The score only returns when Nolan finally leaves the island, again, using the quiet to emphasize the story's themes. To sum up, these were 4 of many ways in which the lack of music itself can be an artistic choice. It can help the audience identify with a listening character, emphasize the sound design, dramatize the dialogue, and even build on a story's themes. I hope you'll keep these in mind when you watch films, because it adds a layer of depth to film viewing when you realize that sometimes even the absence of music can be vital to a scene.
11, 12, 13, 14,